ACL reconstruction and meniscus repair. So I've had a torn ACL and torn meniscus. He saw the MRI and then did the ACL test. And he's like, I don't know how you've been functioning for this long.
His surgeon's words were a clinical verdict on a career that had been quietly grinding to a halt. Nicky Ryan, once hailed as the future of grappling, was a man competing on a knee that had already given up. For over 2 years, he had been fighting on a completely torn ACL, a catastrophic failure of the very machinery that once made him seem invincible. This was the same Nicky Ryan who, as a teenager, systematically dismantled seasoned black belts and became the youngest athlete to ever compete at the ADCC World Championships. But his meteoric ascent became a story of what could have been, a career fractured by injuries, a family torn apart by a team betrayal that shook the entire sport, and a prodigy who seemed to vanish just as he was meant to inherit his throne. This is the story of that collapse. But more importantly, it's the untold story of what was built from the wreckage. How did one of jiu-jitsu's brightest stars go from a broken competitor to one of the most respected coaches in the world? This isn't a story about failure, it's a story about reinvention. To really get the Nicky Ryan story, you have to separate the myth from the reality. And the reality is somehow even crazier than the myth. Born on June 27, 2001, Nicky's jiu-jitsu journey didn't truly ignite until he was around 13. What followed was a statistical explosion that defied the normal rules of a sport that measures progress in years, not months. By the time he was a young teenager, Nicky Ryan was doing the unthinkable, entering and winning divisions meant for adult men. Let that sink in. While most kids his age were navigating high school, Nicky was on the mats, dismantling grown men with a technical savvy that seemed alien for his years. The grappling forums and message boards lit up. Who was this kid? Where did he come from? His official rise reads like a speed run of a decade-long career. He was awarded his purple belt at just 16 on June 21, 2017. For context, that rank can take a dedicated adult 5 or 6 years to achieve. His brown belt came on October 9, 2019, shortly after his second ADCC appearance. Then, on November 3, 2020, he was promoted to black belt at 19. The average time to get a jiu-jitsu black belt is often 10 years or more. Nicky did it in a fraction of that, putting him in the same rarefied air as generational talents like BJ Penn. But belts are one thing, performance is another, and this is where Nicky cemented his phenom status. In 2017, at only 16, he became the youngest male athlete in history to compete at the ADCC World Championships. He didn't just show up, he belonged. He became a 2-time Polaris 145-pound champion in 2018 and 2019. He also won the brutally tough ADCC West Coast Trials in 2019, punching his ticket back to the world stage. His hit list from this period reads like a who's who of grappling veterans. He beat J.O. Martinez, a feared 10th planet black belt. He submitted Masakazu Imanari, the legendary leg locker whose name is literally synonymous with an entire era of attacks. He even scored a dominant win over Urijah Faber, a UFC Hall of Famer, in early 2021. Nicky wasn't just winning, he was beating specialists at their own game. Yet, this is where the story gets complicated. The man who orchestrated this incredible rise, the legendary coach John Danaher, publicly rejected the very label that seemed most fitting. When asked if Nicky Ryan was a prodigy, Danaher's answer was a surprise. Nicky Ryan didn't really have any great gift, he stated. When Nicky first came to train with me, he was actually kind of overweight. It wasn't athletic at all. Danaher's idea of a prodigy was tied to raw physical gifts, blinding speed, explosive power, natural coordination. In his view, Nicky didn't have any of those in spades. Instead, Danaher said Nicky's success came from something else, something maybe even rarer. So is he a prodigy? No, he's a very mature, hardworking person who knows exactly what they want to be. According to his coach, Nicky's superpower wasn't a gift, but a forged-in-fire work ethic and a brilliant technical mind. Danaher even admitted he constantly held Nicky back, only for Nicky to prove him wrong time and again. Prodigy or not, the results were undeniable. By any measure, Nicky Ryan's teenage accomplishments were historic. He was on a rocket ship headed straight for the top of the sport. The question wasn't if he would win an ADCC world title, but how many. It all seemed inevitable. But in combat sports, inevitable is a dangerous illusion. We're about to get into how it all fell apart, and if you're finding this story as fascinating as we are, consider subscribing. Over 90% of our viewers aren't, and hitting that button is the best way to support deep dives like this one. The fall wasn't a single dramatic event. It was a slow, agonizing erosion that began just as Nicky was entering his athletic prime. The year was 2021. He was 19, a new black belt, and the world was his for the taking. But his own body was about to declare war on his career. The first major blow landed on July 17, 2021. In a match against the tough Dante Leon, something went terribly wrong. Nicky's meniscus flipped inside his knee, locking the joint and sending searing pain down his leg. Most athletes would have tapped out, limped off the mat, and called it a day, but not Nicky. In a show of ridiculous toughness, he kept fighting, adapted his entire game, and won a dominant 5-0 decision. It was a heroic victory, but a costly one. It marked the start of a chronic, debilitating problem. Doctors offered surgery, but Nicky, eager to keep his momentum, chose to put it off, a decision that would have massive consequences. For over a year, he managed it. He trained through pain, he compensated, he adapted, but the knee was a ticking time bomb. It finally detonated in September 2022, just 1 week before the ADCC World Championships, the event his entire career was built around. During a wrestling practice, he went for a lift. His opponent hooked his leg, and then a pop. That sickening internal sound every athlete dreads. The next day, he could barely walk. Though he wouldn't get an official diagnosis until after the tournament, this was the moment his ACL completely tore. What he did next was a decision that sits on the knife's edge between superhuman grit and a terrible idea. Nicky chose to compete. He flew to Las Vegas for the biggest tournament in grappling with a fully torn ACL. He couldn't train for the entire week leading up. His guard game, which relied on a movement that was now physically impossible, was useless. He walked onto the mats a shadow of himself and lost his opening match, a championship dream sabotaged before it even began. But the most shocking part isn't that he competed injured. It's what happened next. Instead of scheduling the reconstructive surgery he desperately needed, Nicky decided to just live with it. For the next 2 years, he tried to train, teach, and even compete with no ACL. It was a silent, grueling struggle. Every training session was a risk. Every awkward step threatened more damage.
About exactly pretty much 1 week before ADCC, I hurt my left knee. Initially, I thought it was another meniscus tear, but it turns out it was actually a full ACL tear. I went into ADCC, definitely didn't perform how I wanted to, you know. I definitely think the knee kind of screwed things up. You know, it messed up my weight cut. I couldn't train the whole week of. My gas tank was a lot worse because I wasn't able to train. So that was definitely, a big factor going into that event. After ADCC, I ended up going down to Florida because that's where my surgeon is. I got an MRI done, and it turns out it was a full ACL tear, and I had like a stress fracture on my femur. You know, it sucks. Past few weeks, I've been doing a lot of thinking on whether or not I want to get surgery. You know, I know there's certain athletes out there like Spencer Lee, a couple of other jiu-jitsu athletes as well that don't have ACLs and are able to go out and compete fine. So I decided, I was going to do a little 3-month trial run of just doing rehab and no surgery and just trying, continue on with my jiu-jitsu career without an ACL on my left leg.
The breaking point, the moment the illusion of functionality completely shattered, came in August of 2024. He was preparing for the prestigious Craig Jones Invitational. but his body finally gave out. B-Team coach Dima Muravani revealed the grim reality. When I entered the camp 10 weeks ago, Nicky Ryan couldn't walk. His ACL buckled. For the final crucial 4 weeks of camp, Nicky didn't train. He could only show up once a week for a single round. He competed anyway. The result was a brutal, one-sided loss to Andrew Tackett. The judges' scorecards told the whole story: 30-24, 30-24, 30-25. It was a whitewash. The experiment was over. The gamble had failed. In January of 2025, Nicky finally announced he would undergo the ACL surgery he had put off for years.
The surgical place called me yesterday, to confirm everything. They're like, yeah, you're scheduled for both ACL reconstruction and meniscus repairs.
The numbers don't lie. Nicky Ryan's pro record stands at a respectable 26 wins and 9 losses, but that stat is misleading. The story is in the timeline. The dominant, unbeatable Nicky Ryan was the one who competed between 2017 and 2020. The Nicky Ryan on the mats from 2022 onward was a different fighter, one hamstrung by his own anatomy. The Prodigy hadn't been figured out. He had been betrayed by his own body. A torn ACL is a pretty clear reason for a stalled career, but for Nicky Ryan, the physical breakdown was only one part of a far more devastating storm. At the exact same time, his body was failing him. His professional and personal worlds were collapsing around him. Beneath the surface of the injuries, a psychological war was raging. In a moment of striking honesty, Nicky admitted to a destructive relationship with competition. "I'm a very competitive person, so I for sure hate losing more than I like winning," he confessed. "I do think it's something that's kinda held me back, because it makes it so that I'm not as active as I should be." This is the competitor's trap. The fear of losing becomes so huge that it paralyzes you. He tied this anxiety directly to the brutal reality of being a pro grappler. "My whole life, my financial stability, everything depends on my ability to go out there and compete," he explained. "It's a huge hit to the brand if you lose, so leading up to matches, that's definitely something that's on my mind. It's a vicious cycle. The fear of losing leads to inactivity. The inactivity breeds more doubt, making the next match even more terrifying." Adding to this were quiet observations from the community about his lifestyle. While no one ever questioned his technical genius, questions did emerge about his discipline off the mats. Reports described a routine of ordering Uber Eats for every meal, late nights playing video games, and a lack of a serious strength and conditioning program. The contrast with his own brother, Gordon Ryan, who paired his genius with a maniacal devotion to physical prep, was impossible to ignore. It begged the question, was talent alone enough? But the single most explosive event of this period was the dissolution of the Danaher Death Squad in July of 2021. This wasn't just a team breaking up, it was a civil war that tore through the heart of the sport, and, most devastatingly, through the Ryan family itself. The split happened at almost the exact same time as Nicky's first major knee injury, a perfect storm of personal and professional disaster. When the team fractured, Nicky faced an impossible choice: follow his brother Gordon and coach, John Danaher, to their new team, New Wave, or stick with his friends and primary training partners, Craig Jones and company, and help form the rival camp B-Team. He chose his friends, he chose B-Team. That decision severed his relationship with his own brother. In a later interview, Nicky revealed the painful truth. Imagine being 20 years old, at the top of your game, and suddenly being estranged from your only brother, who also happens to be your biggest rival. John Danaher himself confirmed the tension between the brothers was a central reason for the team's implosion. In particular, there was a family tension between two brothers, which magnified over time, Danaher stated. It came to a point where it was difficult for them to be even in the training room together. And as if all this wasn't enough, it was all preceded by a profound personal tragedy. In December of 2020, Just months before the DDS split and his first knee injury, the Ryan brothers' father, Big Gord, died suddenly. Look at the timeline. At 19, his father passes away. At 20, his team violently disintegrates, costing him his relationship with his brother. At that exact same time, his knee suffers its first major injury, starting a multi-year battle that effectively ended his competitive prime before it ever really began. This wasn't just a fall. It was a total collapse of every pillar that had supported his young life. It's from this absolute rock bottom that the most remarkable part of Nicky Ryan's story begins. It makes you ask a bigger question. What truly defines success in a sport this brutal? Is it just about the championship belts, or is there something more? Let us know what you think in the comments. The story of Nicky Ryan could have ended there. It would have been a familiar tale. Immense talent unfulfilled, a prodigy broken by circumstance, destined to become a what-if, debated on forums for years. But this is where the narrative takes a sharp, unexpected turn. The moment Nicky Ryan, the competitor, was forced to the sidelines was the very moment Nicky Ryan, the coach, began to emerge. The broken prodigy narrative crumbles when you look at what he's done since. While his own competitive dreams were put on ice, he was quietly forging a new identity, one grounded not in his own victories, but in the success of others. He became a lead instructor at what is now Simple Man Martial Arts in Austin, the home of B-Team. The gym's own description of him says it all. It doesn't just focus on his past wins, but on his value as a teacher. Nicky Ryan is one of the most technically refined grapplers of his generation. Known for his precision, composure, and deep understanding, Nicky has built his reputation not only through world-class competition, but through his ability to teach complex techniques with clarity and control. This wasn't an accident, it was a deliberate pivot. He channeled the same obsessive, analytical mind that made him a teenage phenom into the art of teaching. And he found a unique way to keep learning. To learn new moves, I watch wrestling more than jiu-jitsu to analyze and adapt, he said. He'd scour social media for wrestling footage, find concepts that could translate to grappling, and then workshop them on the mats. He was no longer just training to win. He was deconstructing combat to teach others how to win. The proof of his coaching skill isn't just talk, it's documented. In 2024, in a huge vote of confidence, B-Team named Nicky the head coach for its campaign at the second Craig Jones Invitational. This was a massive responsibility. The results silenced any doubters. The B-Team athletes he prepped looked phenomenal. Most notably, Nick Rodriguez, a physical beast who had sometimes been criticized for his finishing ability, put on a submission clinic. Under Ryan's guidance, Rodriguez won his division with a dominant performance, finishing multiple elite opponents with a picture-perfect rear naked choke, a clear sign of world-class coaching. His impact is visible everywhere, on the mats in Austin and in the corners at competitions. You can see him giving calm, focused instruction, shouting simple cues that trigger the complex techniques he's drilled with his athletes for months. At the 2025 IBJJF No-Gi Worlds, he coached Simple Man competitors to numerous victories, helping solidify the gym as a new powerhouse in the sport. His teaching style reflects his personal philosophy, intelligent training, technical efficiency, and patience. His gift is taking the chaos of jiu-jitsu and breaking it down into logical, understandable systems. He isn't just teaching moves. He's teaching a framework for how to think. The competitor was broken. There's no denying that. But from those broken pieces, a world-class coach was built. Nicky Ryan didn't just find a new job, he found a new purpose. He transformed the tragedy of his competitive derailment into a second act that might be even more impactful than the first. He was no longer just a prodigy. He was becoming a kingmaker. Nicky Ryan has successfully pulled off one of the hardest pivots in sports, He has transformed himself from an injured competitor into an elite, highly respected coach who leads a world-famous gym and is molding the next generation of stars. This isn't the story of a man who broke. It's the story of a man who adapted. Through the injuries, the family turmoil, and the public pressure, he kept showing up. And the wildest part? At 24 years old, his story is far from over. He's now going through the brutal process of surgery and rehab with the stated goal of returning to competition. The technical genius that made him special never left. In fact, after years spent dissecting the sport as a coach, his mind might be even sharper. Ultimately, the story of Nicky Ryan challenges our definition of success. We're conditioned to see greatness only through the lens of gold medals. His journey suggests a different model, one where adapting in the face of crushing adversity is its own form of greatness. The Prodigy was derailed, but he refused to be defeated. He simply changed tracks, and in doing so, may have found a more enduring legacy than any single medal could ever provide.